Hello folks, today I'm gonna talk about an interesting idea that came into my mind a long while ago, and I spent quite some time to create it. The idea that came into my mind while creating one of the longer events of my video game that I'm working on at the moment was how to create a choice. Yes, sure, that's very easy to create, like show choice and you just insert it. But the question was, how can I create a choice that, you see, it's not necessarily a choice? Like, the player can choose any of the X branches, let's say, but the point is that the player has to go through all of them. But the only choice the player has is, the order. Like, let's say we have choices 1, 2, 3, and 4. And usually I like it dim with middle and disallow cancel. So the point is that with this choice created as an event, the player will choose one of those, and well, basically they will just continue. And once any of the branches is chosen, everything that follows the choice will simply go on. But what if I want the player to go through all 4 of them in any order, and the point of the choice would be to simply choose the order the player would want, but in the end they will have to go through all 4 of them. So basically we're gonna introduce some text in here, like show choice. Let's see, we have text 1, we have text 2 in here, we have text 3 in here, and of course we have when 4 text 4. Okay, so in order to ensure that the player will go through each of these, we will have to insert a loop. Actually, this one is at the end. So we have to introduce a loop, and the choices will be introduced in the loop. However, the point is that the loop will keep repeating itself again and again and again. So again, I came up with a problem that I saw quite soon. How do I make it so that the player actually can leave the loop, because you don't want the player to go through the same choices again and again and again. So basically you want this to happen only once. So in order to do this, we have to call 2 variables. So basically we're going to introduce a conditional branch at each of those, and we are going to introduce, let's say, some variables. Let's say variable choice 4, choice 3, choice 2, and of course choice 1. So for this one we'll have this variables equals 0. So what this translates as would be, as long as this variable is 0, the player will go through this, and at the end of this one we will introduce variable add or set to 1. So basically the player can only go through this choice only once. If they have gone more than once, they will no longer go through it, because you don't want the player to go through all the choices again and again and again. So basically we're gonna do the same thing again in here. Let's copy this for now in here, here, and here. Now that we have copied it, we can put it here. Let's see, so we have variable 2 in this case. We put the text in here, then we have variable 2 here. Oh wait, variable 1. Okay, so now we have here variable 3. If it equals to 0, then the player will see the text, and we increase the value of the variable, we set it to 1. Then we have text number 4 in here, and the conditional again has to be changed. If variable number 4 equals 0, we have the text that we see, and then we set this variable number 4. we set it to 1. Before the loop I usually introduce a variable, well, the 4 variables. Wait, let it like this, and I set them to 0 because I don't know entirely, like up till today I haven't figured out if variables get preserved while you switch from a map to another. So just to be sure, in case I use a variable already used, I set them to 0 before the loop. Now the point is, with the loop, in the loop, I'll also introduce another conditional that says if variable 1 is greater than 1, and then the same thing if variable 2 is greater than 1, if variable 3 is greater than 1, is greater than 1, okay, and of course variable 4, if it is greater than 1, then we have break loop. So what this function translates as, we introduce the variables and we set them as 0. This is not mandatory because usually if you name a variable in RPG Maker and you don't give it a value, it will automatically be taken as 0. We create a loop in which we have the choices 1, 2, 3 and 4. The conditionals state that you can only read through that once, and then you set the variable to 1, or you can use either set or add 1, it's the same thing, but you can also set it as 1, it's not of a problem. So let's see what it's done. We'll set starting player position in here because it's set somewhere else, and let's see if it works. In order to achieve this, I took quite so many hours, and probably it's gonna be something that any of you might come up with as an idea. Usually I prefer very complicated and intricate stuff, so let's see how it works. So we have the event here. We started the loop, we have choice 1, which reveals us the first choice, and it no longer allows us to choose it. We have choice 2 and no longer can use it. As you can see, we have choice 3, we have choice 4, and then we're free to go because basically the event is over. You see, we go through each. Of course you introduce a lot more text, it's not of a problem. What you can introduce here is also another conditional, and this time without this part. You can introduce this here if it is greater than 1. You know, in different cases we can add some fluff text, like I already talked with you about that. Now this actually fits very well. Preferably this conditional should be put before the one here because well, actually it doesn't matter in this case because we said the variable equals 0. Now if you put them as greater than 0 and you have one here that is, let's say, 5, you should take into account that both will be displayed. So take into account as you put the signs in here, the way you put them in here, and the order is very important because they will be taken into account from up to bottom. So I don't remember exactly the case, but I met one situation in which I had to change the position of the conditionals because they would both be shown and I did not require both to be shown. So in this case you have if it is higher than 1, you have this one, so we have a fluff text. Basically, in those situations where you have NPCs that you can only talk to them once, you use something like this. And we can introduce it in here as well. Let's see, variable 2, okay, and here variable 3, and here variable 4, variable 4. Okay, apply OK. Let's see how it goes. So we have 1. If we choose this again, will only be shown this text. If we choose 2, will be shown the text again. Basically, the last option that you choose will no longer allow you to see this text, because by the time you do this, you have each of the 4 variables as written in here. They are greater than 1, so you break the loop. Now, if you want to introduce a choice in a choice, for example, let's say instead of this text here, let's introduce, or let's leave the text actually, and let's introduce another choice in here. Let's say this one is smaller, like 1, 2, and 3. And again, I like it dim, middle, and disallow. Let's say 1 and 2 only. So we have 1 and 2, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the same, we're gonna do the same things, but we have to add different variables. So in this case, I'm gonna put a variable, let's say 5 in here. 5, the other 5, okay. If it is greater than 1, and here we're gonna introduce another variable called 6, and again if it is greater than 1. Now we're gonna introduce this again, and in case it is equal to 0, we have, if it is equal to 0, we have, let's say, text 5, and we have control variables 5, add +1 or set as 1. Now the same thing has to be done in here when we replace it with 6. If it is 0, we have the text 6, and we set the variable 6 as 1. Now this choice in here, we also have to introduce in a loop, of course. And once we have introduced it in a loop, as I also said, I prefer controlling the variables and saying 5 set to 0, and we set 6 to 0 in case we have used them before. And now we have these two, we have this choice that we are obliged to go through in order to finish this part. Let's see how it works in this case. And also we have the show choices, we have the loop, but again we need the conditional. If 5 as a value is greater than 1, and of course if 6 is greater than 1, okay, we also need to not forget to break the loop, else you will just end in a, well, repetitive sequence. and you don't want that because it doesn't look very cool. Now let's see how it goes. The game takes kind of long to load, to save and, well, load, because I have pretty lengthy events in this game that I'm working on, and it's kind of taking their toll. So we have 1, and 2. So you can no longer choose 1. Although there was a minor problem that I saw. So we have the loop, we have this one, and also we have this one in here, which we should delete from here because we don't want it here and we want it here instead. Why would we want it here instead? Well, because when it starts going through this loop, it also will mark this one as well. It can also mark something outside the loop for some reason, so we want it here. Only after the player has gone through this little loop in here and we break that loop do we add it +1 in here, because if you saw it correctly, it was marked as 1 as a value, and then we have this shown instead of, oh wait, oh no, I screwed that up. It's really not a problem. We have to put it here like this. So let's see. I already talked with you about that. It's the same thing if you put it here and if you put it here. I forgot it does. It can also, it might happen, I mean it happened in my case once, that it can read the line here even if it is outside the loop. So let's see how it works in here. It should work nice. It should be all nice and funny. So let's see. We start the event, we have 2, 3, and choice 4. Basically, if we go through this, each of them, we get the text shown. 4 for some reason doesn't want to show me the text. Oh wait. Oops. Silly me. Now it's correct. Now it's correct. Alright. And we have 1, which shows 1. And then we have to go through this mini choice. Once we go through each, we break the loop. And we are free again. So basically, this is the structure that I found. Probably there are easier ways, but this is the one that I know and I wished I shared. I've got an event that takes around, well, it's a dialogue between 2 characters and has this structure of a loop with a choice that includes a loop with a choice, and one of those choices also includes another choice inside it, and it takes around 20 and so minutes to go through that dialogue event. My game will also have a very long part of it will be a visual novel with all sorts of stuff like this. So basically this is how you create a choice that has the player go through all the branches of the choice instead of just choosing one, and just like most visual novels are. You choose one and basically what happens is only choice based. But in some cases you might want the player to go through all the choices, and it's up to them what order they pick their branches as. Okay, so this would be pretty much for today. I'll be later with many more tips because I have quite some experience now. So what can I say? Have fun!